Hey y'all, it's your girl Morgan Renee Myers tuning in for another reading of Storytime with More Am I Trying to Sleep in the Bed You Made by Virginia D. Berry and Donna Grant. We're in chapter 25. I'm going to hop right into it. If you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go do that. It's Morgan Myers, M-Y-E-R-S. You'll see a red logo with a yellow M inside. That stands for my brand, More Am I, because you're going to want more of my reading, education, and entertainment, okay? So chapter 25. Yes. Y-E-S. Slow down. At 4:23 on the morning Marcus was leaving, Pat gave in and called. "I'd like to sail with you, if the offer still stands." "You like it down to the wire, don't you?" His voice was groggy with sleep. Marcus's flight was booked, but Pat got a seat on a later one. When she arrived at Neater K, Marcus was at the bar with Otto. He waved, and she smiled a bit too brightly. "Care for a rum punch?" he teased. He was going to treat her like always. He decided it was the best way to get the old Pat back, and he missed his sparring partner. "Club soda for me." Pat remembered the effects of Otto's potent libation. Marcus's itinerary called for a pre-dawn departure, and she wasn't starting the trip hungover. Sorry for the noise, y'all. I'm at my place of work, which is the movie theater, so I'm upstairs near where I guess the projectors are in the wall behind me, so... Towards sundown, they headed to the slip where Brother's Keeper was moored. "I'll show you below. You can stow your stuff," Marcus said. Pat followed him past the wheelhouse. So this is the living room and kitchen, saloon and gallery. Yep, your bunk is down these stairs. I'm at the other end. Instead of a narrow cot in a tiny room like she expected, Pat found a cozy cabin with watercolor seascapes on the walls. The double bed had a brass headboard, built-in oak drawers, provided plenty of storage, and curtains fluttered at the open portholes. "You have your own head," he pointed to another door. "Always." Marcus rolled his eyes. "The head is the bathroom." "Right, whatever. A real bedroom. Pretty spiffy for a boy from Queens." "Stateroom. It's not the QE2, but it'll be home for a while." "Tell me something. Are you going to correct me the whole trip?" I'm betting you'll learn quick to keep me from pointing out your mistakes." She knew he was right. "This is so, luxurious. You've done pretty well for yourself, haven't you?" "Like I thought I was doing." Marcus saw her face cloud over. "Anyway, freshen up or whatever it is you women do and come up when you're ready. I'm going to toss a couple of swordfish steaks on the grill. I got to go over charts and weather reports, so I need to make it an early night." "Aye, aye, Captain," Pat saluted, and when he left, she unpacked, showered, and found Marcus upstairs, taking fish off the grill. "You look nice." Pat fingered the skirt of her purple gauze dress self-consciously. "Glad you like it. I bought it in 3 colors on the way to the airport. I've eaten myself out of most of my clothes, and this hides a multitude of sins." "Give yourself some slack." "I did." She patted her hip. 25 pounds worth of slack. "I think you look good. Kind of like you used to when we were growing up." Pat raised her eyebrow. "Not that I thought you didn't look nice, all corporate and pressed for success. That's just not how I think of you." She put her hands on her hips. I'm stepping in it for sure now. Why don't I quit while I'm behind?" "Thought we eat out here." Oh, I guess that was him saying that. She put her, okay, so, "Not that I thought you didn't look nice, all corporate and pressed for success. That's just not how I think of you." She put her hands on her hips. I'm stepping in it for sure now. Why don't I quit while I'm behind? Thought we eat out here. He had set a small table in the corner of the deck. "I didn't know you could cook, much less navigate this thing." You can find Florida. And what am I going to do in the middle of the sea for 3 weeks while you're looking for it? Give me a break. This ain't Gilligan's Island. In 15 minutes, Pat was sampling her swordfish. I'm impressed, Carter. Can I quote you? No, but you can quote me on The View. It's beautiful. The sinking sun left streaks of rose and plum on a cineous sky that was fast turning indigo. Maybe this is what I need. Just wait. There's nothing like sunrise and sunset at sea. It makes you remember we're not in charge of as much as we think we are. Pat wondered if his comment was aimed at her, but she left it alone. After the meal, Marcus leaned into the curve of the banquet and put his feet up. Pat took her cigarettes out of her pocket. There are 3 rules for this trip. You can't smoke those funky things below. You can't talk about the good old days of CCG. And as far as the boat is concerned, I'm the boss. You do what I tell you. Okay, I'll only light up outside. She put a flame to the tip of her cigarette for emphasis. Rule number 3, I guess I have to go along with, but only about the boat. But 2, I'll give it a shot, but I can't make promises. I'm trying to be sociable and obey the CGG gag order. Pat was painfully aware that most of her chit-chat over the last 10 years had been about her work. Marcus watched Pat as she spoke. Her hands never stopped moving, brushing her dress, smoothing her hair. They flapped like spastic bird wings as she worked to keep the conversation moving. He wanted to tell her to relax, but he knew that would make it worse. After an hour, Marcus announced he had work to do if they were going to leave on time. Pat helped clear the table and went below, glad for the getaway. Before dawn, they weighed anchor. Marcus had charted what he called the easy does it route that would take them on a leisurely course around the eastern Caribbean, then north through the Atlantic until they reached Boca Raton. Pat was green around the gills, so she laid low, but with James Brown to keep him company, Marcus stayed on the good foot. On day 2, she felt less wobbly. They anchored in Grenada at Prickly Bay, found grub in town, and retired early, brushed from the sea air. In Martinique, they docked at Fort de France. Marcus dined on blood sausage and conch fricassee. Pat ate bouillabaisse and sampled the local rum vive, hoping it would help her calm down. I don't know if I'm saying this right. Here she was, surrounded by the most beautiful scenery imaginable, but instead of enjoying herself, she wondered if she was ruining the trip for Marcus. But he never complained. Occasionally, he would coax a smile with a silly story. He dared her into trying her hand at the helm, and when she seemed interested, he explained the how and why of sailing. He was giving her time. A few hours from St. Kitts, the afternoon sun was high, the water calm, and Marcus was at the wheel. He glanced over his shoulder to where Pat lounged on the deck. A book lay across her lap, but she stared off in the distance, lost in thought. For weeks, Pat's mind would stall when she least expected it. Turner was the usual culprit. She'd seen him sneering as he asked how much it would cost him to make her go away, but this time it was the guard posted in her office and the boxes waiting on her desk when she returned from her meeting with Lloyd. How did I miss all the signs? So busy looking, you forgot to see. Out of the blue, Pat heard Gail's little girl voice. Where'd that come from? Hey, come here, Marcus called. What? Pat jumped, and her book tumbled to the deck. Just come here, quick. She joined him on the bridge. What is it? Look, there. He pointed at a silvery iridescence vaulted in front of the boat. Flying fish. Another one arched over the bow and splashed into the sea on the starboard side. I always thought they were fake, like mermaids. They hate to hear you say that. Look at them. Dozens of the winged fin creatures took flight, and Pat and Marcus marveled at the brilliantly choreographed ballet. How do they do that? Know exactly when to jump so it's perfect. Pat watched in amazement. She spent years trying to perfect her own leap, one that would take her soaring into a dazzling future where things fit together neatly. It didn't work. They probably don't plan it at all. The performance was over, and the sea settled back into its random rhythm. I think they just stick together. One goes, they all go. Pat went back to her seat and buried her head in her hands. Marcus debated what to do. After a few seconds, he eased up on the throttle and set Keeper on autopilot. Life doesn't always work out how you plan it. He sat next to her, stared at his shoes a minute. That's not all bad. He turned to look at her. Sometimes it's even for the best. I don't want to talk about this, Marcus. Well, I think you do. You said it yourself. One of us needs to talk. Who? The other appears. Think it's an accident? I don't anymore. You don't understand. You have no idea what it feels like to be unwanted. Everybody loves Marcus. You were a cute kid, annoying as hell, but cute. You had 2 parents who loved you and each other. Do you know how lucky you were? All right, what happened with Freddie was terrible. But even then, you had all the backup in the world. I was a homely, fat, hand-me-down kid. My mother actually lied to me to keep from claiming me. She stood, then sat down again. Gail's folks took me in, but I always knew her mother was against it, and I wanted to leave before I wore out my welcome. My first year on the job, I got knocked up, and my so-called boyfriend had married a friend of mine behind my back. The only time I ever asked Gail for anything, she stood me up. And my father, I did everything I could so he would be proud of me, and that wasn't good enough. I haven't had a damn thing to count on but my job, and now that's gone. So don't talk to me about what I need, Marcus. You don't know nothing about it. Okay. You told me some things I didn't know. Let me tell you what I do know. I won't talk about this. I've already said too damn much. Pat got up. Marcus grabbed her arm. Sit down. I'm not through yet. This is not about the damn boat. I'll do what I please. She wrenched her arm free. You gonna hide in your stateroom until we get to Florida? No, only until we reach a port where I can get a plane. I'll take you to the airport, but you're gonna listen to me. What choice do I have? I'm a captive audience. Pat folded her arms across her chest and glared. I knew this damn trip was a mistake, she muttered. I'll ignore that. He stepped closer. I know you're hurting. You've been treated bad, and I'd do anything I could to change that, but I can't. Neither can you. That's what you told me. We can't undo what's long over. What happened at CGG is lousy luck. You got the short straw. But tell me if I'm wrong. That shit happens all the time, and you know it ain't personal. I bet you fired people who were doing a good job because the almighty bottom line said you had to. Pat glanced away. And Turner Hughes is an ass, plain and simple. I don't care how important he's supposed to be. I've read him the first time I laid my eyes on his pompous, monogram drawers wearing behind. But he'll get his. One day he'll regret the way he treated you, but it'll be his loss. Don't you know how wonderful you are? Yeah, Oprah's hosting the special. He won't make me cry with this sentimental crap. When we were little, I used to think, Dad, how come she gotta be so smart? Oh yeah, right? For real. He looked past her and shook his head. The day Freddie was shot, it was you who called the police, answered questions. Gail was screaming her head off, and I zoned out. You're all the important things, Pat. Kind, strong, bright, honest. Me and the damn Girl Scouts, Pat shot back. I usually don't have to wonder what's on your mind because you were speaking, but I've always loved that about you, Pat. Look at me. She rolled her eyes. Don't, Marcus. We've barked up this tree before. It's the tree I want, and I'm tired of yapping around it. I was jealous of Hughes when we met him at the museum. I thought you had the hots for him. How could you not know I acted stupid enough? He rested his hands on her shoulders. I can't play this game anymore, Pat. I love you. I guess I have for years. Don't confuse pity with stop it. It's taken me 15 damn years to say what I felt in Gail's basement. You remember that? Pat never let herself believe it meant anything special to him. I tried to forget it. I convinced myself you'd never be interested in a dumb job, that you were too smart for me. He pulled her closer. You're a real complicated woman, but I love you. If you're not interested, if you don't want me in your life, you'll have to say so. Pat felt a tremble from the place only Marcus had ever reached. Beautiful women must camp outside your building. What do you want with me after somebody like Tia? Tia was a distraction, but I didn't invite her on this trip. You're the one I want to be with. I think you're beautiful in every way, and I love you. Nobody said they loved me. Not since Gail, when we were kids. You can't, Marcus. I can, and I do. Marcus covered her mouth with his, and they spoke all the pent-up feelings lip to lip like the first time, the time neither had forgotten. He held her close with her knees quaked, and without another word, he eased her onto the deck. She found herself in his kiss, clung to him like her life depended on it, and at this moment, it did. Marcus disappeared below in return, ready to love her, in the time it took her to catch her breath. The frenzied urgency of their groping submitted to the gentle sway of the boat on the swells. Miles from landfall, inhibition peeled away like their clothes. Slowly and seamlessly they stroked, licked, nuzzled, and kneaded. And Pat yielded to him, to the feeling, free to be herself, because Marcus knew her, everything there was to know. And she knew him. Extensions of each other, they shared the touch and the sensation. Oh, that's all the juice? Okay. Next day, they put in at St. Kitts, off schedule, but on a new course. Playful and teasing like kids, they wandered the streets and shops, then lunched at a restaurant called the Ballyhoo, and watched people queuing for the ferry to Nevis. With Pat behind the wheel of a rental car and Marcus navigating, they explored the island until almost sunset, when they stopped at DP Bay, left their shoes in the car, and headed toward the shore. 3 cows ambled along the black sand, unperturbed by the human intrusion. So, what do you think? Marcus asked. What's the topic? Pat walked a little ahead, flirting with the surf. Marriage. Pat stopped in her tracks. They say it's lovely, but I've never given it much thought. Marcus spun her around to face him. Well, think about it now. Will you marry me? What did he say? I know I heard wrong. I'm standing on the beach at sunset in the Caribbean, and Marcus just asked me what? Huh? Was all she could manage. Fine. You going to make me say it again? His face was inches from hers. Patricia Ellen Reed, will you marry me? Did you understand me this time? Pat's head bobbed up and down. I understand, but isn't this kind of soon? The water rushed in and bathed their feet. I think it's kind of late. You were so stubborn and contrary. Every time I get close, you run up pick a fight. I did not. Pat folded her arms across her chest. Did so. Anyway, I know I love you and I want to marry you. It seems pretty simple to me. Marcus closed the tiny space between them and covered her mouth with his. Pat wasn't used to feeling out of control. But reason and planning couldn't stand up to the simple truth. I do love him. She melted into his chest and her heart thudded against her ribs. Or was it his heart? She couldn't tell, but she knew she was happy. Pat looked into his eyes. Yes. Pardon me? I didn't understand you. She laughed. Y-E-S. Did you get that? Yes. I love you. Yes. I want to marry you. He hugged her right off her feet. I knew you'd see it my way. Don't get ahead of yourself, Marcus, Garvey called her. Don't you forget the choice was mine. She tried to scoot away, but he pulled her back and held her face in his hands. I'm glad you chose me, even if you are a pain in my behind. Pat felt giddy in love, like a teenager she never was. That night, they ate lobster under the star-spangled sky over Frygate Bay, then found their way back to the boat where they made love on the deck under the yellow moon that felt close enough to touch. They continued on their journey. During the days, Marcus fussed and Pat argued. They kissed and laughed at themselves and at each other like always, only better. At night, they drift off, bodies pressed tight together, and when they changed positions, they were like the flying fish. One went, the other followed. Somehow, in the middle of the sea, Pat felt grounded and secure. When they left the Caicos, headed for Grand Bahama, they hit their first bad weather. Wind churned up the sea, and cracks of thunder silenced the roar of the waves. From the inside of the wheelhouse, Marcus studied Keeper as she scudded over the cresting whitecaps. He was surprised when Pat appeared at his elbow, but he handed her a life jacket and started giving orders. She was a quick study, and combined with what she had already learned to keep him off her back, she proved a worthy first mate. They finally left the storm behind in late afternoon. Exhausted and relieved, he adjusted their course, set the autopilot, and they climbed to the flybridge. The water sparkled as the sun shamelessly exposed itself for the first time all day. I'm glad you're not scared of lightning anymore. Marcus grinned and his dimple winked at her. And I'm really glad you said yes, but I knew you would. Hold on a minute. We aren't married yet. Pat started to unbuckle her life vest. Can I take this thing off now, Captain? She asked sarcastically. You can take off anything you like. Pat ignored his aside. I've been thinking about this wedding business. She plopped down in front of the wheel. You are a famous person, at least semi-famous. She smiled. And you know the press loves love. I don't want a big deal Doves and Limo show for the world to gawk at. So if we're still on, let's do it simple and fast before I change my mind. That's easy as Zacko. What? Friend of mine. He's a judge in West Palm. Retired now. You should see his boat. He's the one who got me into it. Anyway, I know he'd marry us. I'll call him when we get to Nassau. Is there anybody you want to come down? Pat thought a moment. I'll find you a prince, too. We'll have a double wedding. She could see Gail's ponytail bobbing excitedly. Jill's in Spain doing a movie. There's nobody I want to invite to my wedding. Not really. I'm sure your friend can scare up 2 witnesses. How about your mother? Marcus, you know I don't know where she is. Maybe it's time you try to find out. Don't look at me like that. You tried to include your father in your life. It didn't work. Doesn't your mother deserve a chance too? The breeze whipped Pat's hair into spikes. She tried in vain to subdue. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't even know where to begin. For starters, we could check New York, and lots of times folks go back home to start again. Swan City is pretty close to my parents' place. Maybe I could get past being mad about the way she treated me. Maybe we could learn to understand each other, and maybe things are fine just the way they are. Pat looked out in the ocean. She had laid eyes on her mother since that night in the Easy Street when Vernon surprised her with the Turner Hughes story. Maybe you won't know till you see her. You might not even find her, but you won't know till you try. Maybe she could be surprised again. I'll think about it, Marcus, okay? He looked at Pat sitting in the captain's chair. Her brown hair was sun-kissed. Her hair blew every which way. She looked happy. I do love you, you know. Marcus, her face turned serious. Are you sure? Because more than anything, she needed to be sure. Because love had never been something she could count on. The boat pitched on the wave. She reached for the grab rail, and he pulled out his arm. I can't give you any ironclad guarantees about the future. You wouldn't believe me if I did. But am I sure I love you? Yes. Am I sure we belong together? Absolutely. Do you make me crazy? Often. But I'm certain I want to be your friend, your partner, your husband. I even got myself a job. Isn't that a respectable married man thing to do? And I'm unemployed, and I don't want you to feel you have to take care of me. Marriage means you take care of each other. You'll figure out what you want to do next. Maybe start your own ad agency. I don't know, but you will in time. I'll be traveling a lot, but we can handle this. Together, I think we can handle anything. We can, huh? When is the first official Gallagher and Carter trip? After Florida, I'm back in New York a few days. I leave the day before Thanksgiving, big time of the year for sports, and I'm on the road almost 3 weeks. See, you left me before we even married, and you're already nagging. You know, except for hospital stays, my parents have never spent a night apart. Amazing, huh? They don't have to worry. Their record will be safe with us. This could count as our honeymoon. He cut the engine and grinned wickedly. What about our first Thanksgiving? Pat arched an eyebrow. I'm feeling very thankful. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the hatch. The Honorable Zachary Omega Williams was not what Pat expected. The last of 14 children, his name, a declaration that would be no more, grew up on a tenant farm outside Eustis, Florida, and dreamed of playing in the Negro Leagues. Polio sidelined those ambitions. The disease kept him from farm work, but not from books, and excellent grades were rewarded with scholarships. By the time law school beckoned, his father had been dead 6 years, and his 8 surviving siblings had scattered to the 4 winds. After graduation, Williams opened a practice in his hometown, lived in the back of his storefront office, and saved every cent he made. In 2 years, he bought a piece of land near Orlando and moved his 84-year-old mother into a house with her name on the deed. When his mother died, he held onto the farm out of sentiment until a California company intent on building an amusement park made Zachary Williams an offer he couldn't refuse. Williams had done well for a poor crippled colored boy, as he referred to himself, but he never stopped loving baseball and never missed spring training. Zacho met Marcus in his second rookie season with the Orioles, and they became fast friends. He was the first black man Marcus knew with a boat, actually a 121-foot yacht, as Marcus later discovered. The fall after he and Gail broke up, Marcus cruised for Zach on a trip to Bimini, and the friendship hadn't stopped growing since. Pat and Marcus enjoyed the judge's hospitality, and 3 days after their arrival, they stood in front of a gurgling fountain on the palm fringe terrace of his limo palazzo. Marcus's mother wasn't well enough to make the trip, so Booker stayed home with her, and Marcus promised they'd come for a visit right after the first of the year. Pat, her hair softly waved, looked radiant and calm in her ivory silk suit. Marcus, handsome in his navy blue suit, held her hand tight as Zach O begun the proceedings. Rather than select rings on the fly, Pat and Marcus had decided to do without bands of gold and exchange them as Christmas gifts instead. But at the appropriate time in the ceremony, Marcus surprised her with a 16th century Spanish gold coin he found on a dive and had set as a pendant. The judge remarked on the enduring luster of the Dublin in spite of the rough seas it had weathered. He told Marcus and Pat they would need to do the same. From beginning to end, the wedding was over in less than it took to scramble 2 eggs. Well, all right. That's the end of chapter 25. Yes. What? Pat getting married to Marcus? I wonder how this is going to end. Just a few more chapters till we're done with this book. I hope y'all tune in again soon. Check in with you soon. Peace.